No, folks, you are not imagining things. We are on Thursday night at 10 p.m. here at Fantasy and Frames. Shoot the Gap, the IDP Fantasy Football podcast. Sorry, folks, we could not make it last night. I was feeling under the weather, but we wanted to make sure we got this episode in tonight for you. So those of you who are doing double duty watching Thursday Night Football as well as watching us, thank you very much. We promise it'll be worth it. I'm your host, Jorge Edwards. I got JT with me. As always, JT, what's going on, brother?
Hey, man, just watched a little Thursday Night Football. Really debated whether Lamar was the play this week, and I could not sit him. So I put him in all my lineups. And I threw Mark Andrews in a bunch of lineups as well. Paying off for me so far. Two nice double-up touchdowns to Mark Andrews early on in a non-PPR league. So that is also huge to get points for your tight end. So good starts of the night. Let's see if some bets hit later on. But for now, let's talk IDP.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it is pretty nuts. In one of my dynasty leagues, I also have Lamar in, and I had to make the decision whether I was going to put Sam Darnold or Tua in. And based off of the lack of excitement in my voice, you could tell that I already put Tua in. So hopefully the second half will be a little bit more exciting. But
I had a ton of those Tua, Darnold, Trevor Lawrence, like in a ton of 2 quarterback superflex leagues. It was like I had those 3 guys in a ton of leagues, and I was like trying to figure out, do I go all out and I play the same guys in every league, or do I mix it up? So I'm not usually good about mixing it up, but I did play Tua in quite a few spots. I'm hoping he turns around here in the second half.
Yeah, no, I definitely hear you there. So folks, as we normally do, we are, for those of you who are tuning in for the first time, this is our fantasy football podcast here at Fantasy and Frames. If you haven't visited fantasyandframes.com, we encourage you to do so. Each and every week, we have our waiver wire. We have our IDP waiver wire. We got our plays and fades. We got our IDP plays and fades articles. We have fantasy football trends of the week articles. We have our rankings for offense, DSTs, kickers, IDPs. We have dynasty rankings. And then when we get into the heart of rookie eval season, heading up to the NFL draft, we got our rookie rankings. So we got a lot of stuff at fantasyandframes.com. If you're watching us on Twitter, please give us a follow. If you're watching us over on YouTube, subscribe to the channel. Drop any comments you want into the chat. And over on Facebook, give us a follow there too. Give us a follow on TikTok. We're actually pretty big on TikTok. People actually like us, I should say, let me not phrase it like that. People like us in general, but people really like us on TikTok. We got to watch how I'm phrasing that going forward. But and if you want on Instagram, basically everywhere, everywhere you're listening to us or watching us right now, we appreciate the follow and the support. We already got a couple comments in the chat. John McGlynn, what's up, John? He said he just traded Andy Dalton and Marvin Mims for Kareem Hunt. That is an interesting trade.
I like it. Pacheco might be out a couple weeks. Kareem Hunt still seems to kind of be the guy. If you need running back help, I kind of like that move.
Very nice, very nice. All right, well, let's get into some news and notes, and then after that, we'll just jump right into plays and fades because it's late, and at the same time, you guys want to finish watching your game, so totally understand. So let's get into some news and notes, JT. Just going around the NFL talking about defensive relevant nuggets here for you for IDP managers, and this one hurts. JT, you more so than me, but I'm also a true fan. Deshaun Elliott having a knee injury, out in IR. I don't know if he's necessarily done for the season, but he's at least been placed on IR for the next 4 weeks. So what do? They the Steelers, that is, they go out to New England and they acquire Kyle Duggar in the trade. I think it was like a 6th or 7th round pick swap, which coincidentally leads into the next bit of news where Keon White was acquired from the Patriots to the 49ers, which is also a 6th and 7th round pick swap. Are you familiar with the 6-7 thing going on with
yes, I've got 2 12-year-olds. Yes. Yeah. Way too long. I just saw today they put on newsfeed or whatever, whoever put it out, saying that 6-7 was the word of the year by dictionary.com.
Dictionary.com. Yes.
Oh my God. I was like, let's just make it worse. Let's just make it worse.
Yeah. So I was at a going away party for a coworker of mine this afternoon, and I somehow subtly injected 6'7". Like somebody asked me how I was doing, and I just very casually, I was like, yeah, 6'7", and everybody was like, "Oh, I can't believe you just did that." And I'm like, "Yep, that's right, that just happened." Um,
Jorge, you're
yeah.
young, you're with the kids, you know what's cool.
Well, apparently, I know 6'7" is the new mid, which was average. So when you got to promote your brand on the different social media channels, you basically become absorbed by the content there, and you learn all the different things. You see all the reels and you see all the programming. So you know some of it's cool and some of it's 6'7". So anyhow, bunch of 6 and 7 round picks in exchange for these two players. Now for fantasy managers, for IDP fantasy managers, Deshaun Elliott's gone. I had him as the rest of the season DB1, top 12 defensive back for fantasy managers. Obviously, that's no longer the case. Are you feeling comfortable though for Kyle Duggar as a fantasy option here, coming from the Patriots to the Steelers?
This Steelers secondary is now the land of the walking dead. I mean, literally, they are just taking everybody's old DBs that nobody wants anymore, that were good like 4 or 5 years ago. And they're like, we'll just take all of them. Just keep sending them over. Take the next guy and the next guy. It hasn't worked out yet. I guess they're like, hey, what's one more try? Might as well give Kyle Duggar a try. We got Jarrell Peppers. We got Chuck Clark. We got Darius Slay. I mean, they're just Ramsey. They're just pulling everybody in. Again, this would be an all-star secondary 5 years ago. Deshaun Elliott is a crushing loss. First off, for the Steelers, as I'm a Steelers fan, he's probably been the best player with all the talent they have. He's been the best player on that defense all year. So losing him I think is going to be a huge, huge loss for fantasy IDP. I agree with you. He was a top 10 guy for me, to probably top 5 this year for DBs. He's been fantastic. So that's going to be a huge loss. It's going to be interesting to see if Duggar can get in there. He obviously fell out of favor in New England. They didn't like him. They were playing rookies over him, late round rookies, not like guys they drafted high. So that it's going to be interesting to see if Duggar gets in there and plays. He does not have the foot speed. He cannot cover anymore. They are going to have to use him close to the line as like an extra linebacker, a guy making plays, blitzing him, doing some different stuff. They cannot be using him in coverage. If they decide they need more coverage help, I think you're going to have to go with Chuck Clark. I really do. And to me, the fact that they went and got Duggar after getting Jabril Peppers tells me how little they like Jabril Peppers at this point. They're like, one Patriots old DB we don't like. Let's go get the other guy and see if we like him instead. So that's not good, because I think Duggar and Jabril Peppers are pretty similar type of players as far as their box safeties, guys that have Clay. They're only going to be good close to the line. They're going to hopefully make you extra tackles. They're going to be terrible in covers. They're going to get beat everywhere. So it's going to be interesting to see if Duggar can at least give them half a good year. I have to tell you, I'm not holding my breath that this works out very well, but we'll see. And then if you want to look over at Keon White, he's a guy that, man, I tell you what, he has taken a tumble. He got off to an unreal start last year for the Patriots as a former second-round pick. You're like, ooh, okay, this guy's going to start chugging. He's going to start chugging along and be a defensive guy. I picked him up in a ton of leagues last year. He qualified on my fantasy league as a defensive tackle because they were running that 3-4, and he basically was playing the Cam Hayward defensive end spot. So he was technically playing D end, but he was inside. So they kind of was a defensive tackle. So he was a steal at D tackle last year. I picked him up everywhere in those types of leagues, and I was playing him early in the year, and I was just, I was loving it. He killed right off the bat, and then he just disappeared after week like 5 or 6 last year and never has come back. So, and it feels like New England, you can see it with Vrabel. He is just like, I want to get rid of everybody else that everyone else drafted. They want to clean house and just play with all their guys. So it's an interesting move to see if he can get rejuvenated with the Niners. I know we feel like we talk about it every week. The Niners, like last week's show was all Niners, but they need help. Yeah. And so it's like, can he get a shot there? Possibly. I'm not racing out to pick him up
Right.
until I see something out of him, just because he has been doing nothing for New England this year. And he was pretty much dead the last half of last year. So it's an interesting trade. I guess, just throw it against the wall, see if it sticks, if you're the Niners at this point. So you might as well try it. But for IDP purposes, I'm not super pumped about going to get him. I had him on a couple teams, and he literally was, when the season started, he was like my first drop. If I had to make a drop to make room on my roster, he was one of the first guys I was dropping.
So we got Aiden in the chat. What's up, Aiden? He says he has Michael Williams, been very frustrating. What's his outlook? More of the same, unfortunately. So that's exactly the thing I was about to pose to you. The question I was about to pose to you, JT, is that, when you look at some of his defensive metrics, not great, Bob. He's only over the past 3 weeks since he's been given the opportunity. 5 pressures. He has gotten you a sack, but he grades out very poorly per PFF. We look at the best graded pass rusher on the team over the past 3 weeks, Bryce Huff. And for those who are wondering why I keep saying 3 weeks, I'm not a big believer in looking at season-long metrics, because that can definitely skew trends that are either showing an improvement in performance or a decrease in performance. So I like to do it in like little chunks just to get to see the snapshot of where things are at currently. But like I said, over the past 3 weeks, just hasn't been producing well. Bryce Huff had that injury last week, I believe it was, or the week before. So it makes you wonder whether or not getting the Keon White acquisition is more of an indictment on Walker, or them just wanting to, I don't know, maybe the word about Bryce Huff or something. Either way, it doesn't sound good at all if you're an edge rusher for the San Francisco 49ers for fantasy football purposes.
For me, Williams is more of a hold for dynasty leagues. If I'm in a redraft, I'm out on him. If I'm in a dynasty league where I'm playing like a mixed offense defense and we don't have very big benches, I'm out on him as well. So the only place right now I'm holding Michael Williams is in deep dynasty leagues where I have a really big roster, or I can keep him on my taxi squad. I still think there's some upside there, but it's gonna take a minute. Like I would not expect to see much different than what we've seen this year for the rest of the season. Maybe next year, maybe a little bit after that, maybe he picks it up a little bit. But I'm definitely hesitant. I'm a hold only in deep leagues taxi squad situations.
So normally we don't do offense questions on the show. At least we don't answer them live on the show. We answer them live in the chat. But JT, you know what? Since it's Thursday, it's 10 o'clock. It's way past our normal time, which, by the way, all 77 of you who are tuning in, thank you very much for doing so on a last minute notice. We just put together the show. We're going to answer Bob Hope's 1, 2, 3 question right here. He's got a question. Juwan Jennings, Cortland Sutton, Keenan Allen, or Jacoby Myers in PPR. Pick one. Thanks. So I don't like this Broncos team going against the Houston Texans this week. This Texans secondary has been shutting down a lot of players, and the quarterbacks have been having a lot of poor games. So I'm out on Sutton. Jennings, I don't know what the hell's going on there. Like, he's fighting with Shanahan. He's not fighting with Shanahan. He's injured. He's not injured. Is Brock in? Is Mac Jones in? Just a lot of craziness going on there. So I would stick with Keenan Allen personally. Would be my pick here versus Jacoby Myers.
I think
Brock
you got to
Bowers
go
coming
Allen.
back. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think you got to go Allen. That's an ugly group, but I think Allen's the pick.
What you call it? Aiden says I have him referring to Michael Walker in our Fantasy and Frames Dynasty Combo League. So trying to get the inside edge. Am I playing you this week, Aiden? Who are you playing? If I'm playing you, no, start Michael Walker.
You're like absolutely play him. You're like, yes, start him. I don't like him at all. Play him.
Exactly. Spartacus Medina, he said, wow, this is a big JT, do you mind answering this one on
you go ahead and give the next topic. I will read through that and answer that in the chat.
Okay, we got you, Spartacus. Don't worry. I am Spartacus. Julian Love. This one is an interesting situation, and because his situation may be something I'm discussing a little bit later in Plays and Fades. Anyhow, he's been dealing with a hamstring injury, which has caused him to miss the past 4 games. And for those who are unfamiliar with Julian Love, he is a safety for the Seattle Seahawks. Plays a lot in the box. It definitely helps out at the run defense position, basically being a de facto linebacker, getting close to the line of scrimmage, which is great for IDP defensive backs because that ensures you get a lot of tackles, specifically solo tackles, which count for more than assisted tackles. Like I said, he's been dealing with this hamstring injury for the past few weeks. They're just coming off the bye, the Seahawks, that is. They have a matchup against the Commanders on Sunday Night Football. But, Coach McDonald said today that he suffered a setback. This is putting a little bit of his availability in doubt. So that'd be 5 straight games. And so that makes you wonder just who would they have to slide back in there to take over for him. That may be one of my plays of the week at defensive back. Let's keep that, questions, in the back of our heads right there. The news that I think is probably the most important so far this week is that Andrew Van Ginkel was a full participant in practice, making fantasy managers very ecstatic. As when he's healthy, he's one of the premier edge rushers in IDP Fantasy Football. If he comes back, I'm starting him. He has been so I'm playing this week, I'm not playing that week, because he's not saying that. The dude I think is suffering from this neck injury, which neck injuries, I think you can all say, JT, take your freaking time, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, I mean I turned look sideways wrong and I'm I can't barely move for 3 days. So yeah, I can't imagine hitting somebody and tackling with a neck injury has got to be the worst possible thing ever.
Yeah. And but at the same time, if he's healthy, he's good to go. I saw that he's cleared. I adjusted him in my rankings, which you can find over at fantasyandframes.com. They'll be finalized Saturday night. Which, yes, you should go on Saturday night and check out Fantasy and Frames before you actually go out or you come back from going out, or whatever it is. But yeah, no. So start them while you can, because I something tells me that this is going to be more of the same from Van Ginkel. The way things have going so far this year. So if you're starting him, he's going to get you sacks. He's going to get you quarterback hits. He's going to get you tackles for a loss. So all those add up for IDP. So definitely go into that. And I don't know, JT, it's been kind of light on the injury news, new injury news for defense, at least. Anything jumping out to you
for a week? Hopefully for 1 week. Trayvon Wall. I was going to talk about it here in a little bit. Trayvon Wallace questionable for the Panthers. Okay. I'll talk to that a little bit when we get our plays and fades. He's questionable. A couple other guys out there. Derwin James. I don't know if he got a couple people last week. He got me in a couple leagues. I didn't realize that he was super questionable. Not kind of questionable, but super questionable. He ended up not playing, and I had him in a few lineups. I didn't get him out. He looks like he's back and good to go this week. So he doesn't have an injury designation this week, so that should be nice. And if you had Brian Branch, Lions back from suspension. So if you have a league where you can put guys on suspension on IR, get them off your IR and back in your lineup.
Very good. Very, very good call. Nick Emawari, the rookie from South Carolina, I think it was, for the Seattle Seahawks, their slot cornerback. He's also back this week. He's also been missing a lot of time, coincidentally, at the same time period that Julian Love has been injured. So the Seahawks almost got all their pieces back. It's just the Julian Love piece is the Achilles heel. Now, normally, on our show here, Shoot the Gap, we have a segment next where we talk about, it's called Money or Mirage, where the gist of it is we present to you a scenario and you all of us go around the frames and we discuss, is this a money statement? Are we buying this, or is this a mirage? Don't read into what we're saying too much. But since Gary cannot be with us tonight and Steve cannot be with us tonight, which they will be going forward Wednesday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern as we do our live stream then. Let's just skip that segment. Thursday Night Football's on. We get it, folks. You're glued in. You want to see what's happening, even though the Ravens are starting to separate a little bit. How about JT? Let's just get into our plays and fades for the week.
Let's do it.
Now, of course, we're going to go through our plays and fades where we're going to talk about a linebacker, defensive lineman, and a defensive back that we're high on for this week and those that we're low on. If you want some more plays and fade recommendations, if you head over to fantasyandframes.com first thing tomorrow morning, Joe Harlow, who does our IDP plays and fades this season, has been crushing it. His hit rate has been fantastic in terms of players to play and to fade. And for those who are kind of curious, like, why do you call it plays and fades? Why don't you call it start and sits? Because there's some scenarios where you can't afford to sit a player no matter how shitty their situation is. You could temper your expectations, though. You can fade what you're looking at, so that's what we call it, plays and fades. And so you see that article at fantasyandframes.com. And if you don't have time and you're on TikTok, we post those videos of our graphics of those players over there. However you want to digest the content, we have ways for you to watch it and listen to it. So without further ado, let's get into our plays and fades for defensive linemen. Now, our rule here is we follow the Fantasy Pros expert consensus rankings for the week. So for defensive linemen, we do not include players who were in the top 12 because, let's face it, folks, you're starting them. So let's talk about guys who are outside the top 12. For linebackers, we go outside the top 24. And then for defensive backs, again, outside the top 12. So with that being the case, JT, who is your defensive lineman play for the week?
All right, I'm going to slightly cheat here. I'm going to tell you guys why I'm cheating here. I'm taking a guy that's actually ranked 11th this week.
Oh, just close enough.
I don't think enough people realize that he should be ranked that high. I would think a lot of people, if you ask them, is this guy ranked in the top 15, they would say no. And that's why I'm cheating just a hair, because I don't think a lot of people still consider him a full-time, like, yes, you have to start him. And I'm telling you, yes, you have to start him. And that is Tui Tuipulotu from the Chargers. He's been my guy. I feel like I talk about him more than any player that's not a Steeler or as a Colts player. He can send me a jersey or anything he wants later, signed to be perfect, because I talk about him all the time. He's the greatest. He's having an unreal season. The guy's already got 6 sacks this year. He's been tearing it up. Now that Joey Bosa's gone and he's got the full-time role, he has been phenomenal this year. Now he gets the chance to go against the Titans, who have the worst offensive line in the league. They've already given up 30 this season. 34 sacks. 34. It's insane. Not less than 2 sacks yet this year has Cam Ward taken. He's got sacked at least twice, and he's had upwards of 5 or 6 sacks multiple games. You got to play your Chargers players this week. Tuli, to me, he's a week-to-week for a lot of people. This week is a absolute must-start. So that's why I'm putting him in there. And also to go along with him, I think Khalil Mack, who right now is ranked at defensive end 16, is an absolute must-start as well. Injured for a little bit, came back. He's been solid since he's been back from injury. I think both those guys, I would not hesitate. If you have a league that plays a lot of defensive players, I wouldn't hesitate to play both those guys. I'd start them both at my defensive ends on the same team. I think they're going to tear it up. I'm all about this Chargers defense lately. They've been playing fantastic, and now they get a shot against one of the worst offenses in the league. I think both these guys can rack up 1 or 2 sacks each this week. So I'm all over both of them. I think they're absolutely must starts.
All right. Love it. So I'm going to go deep here. We're going to be going, further down the ECR for a couple of these players I'll be recommending, because I just have faith in them. In fact, one of them is a player that I've wrote about back-to-back weeks over at fantasyandframes.com in our IDP waiver wire article. And that is Washington Commander Jacob Martin, the DL 87 per Fantasy Pros Week 9 ECR. In terms of fantasy points allowed to the defensive end / edge rusher position, since Week 5, the Seattle Seahawks have allowed the 10th most fantasy points per game. PFF has Martin rated as the 16th best edge rusher since Week 7, where he got the full-time role. Now, for those of you who are asking, why is he like a guy that you care about for the Commanders in terms of a pass rusher? Dorrance Armstrong, who was their best pass rusher at the time, is out for the season. He got injured, had like a little knee hit, not a little bit, like a big knee injury in the Cowboys game. And since then, Jacob Martin has come on, and we saw him get to Dak Prescott. We saw Jacob Martin get to Patrick Mahomes on Monday Night Football this past week. A Chiefs team that, for fantasy purposes, does not give up a lot of points to the defensive end position. Martin was able to get, a tackle for a loss, 2 sacks. Like, he finished as the what do you call it? The DL 21. The DL 15 with 16 points using Fantasy Pros scoring. Like I said, he's the 16th best PFF edge rusher since week 7. He has been since week 7 the DE 21 in points per game. DL overall also 21 with an average of 11.5. Again, and I go back to the fact that the Chiefs don't give up a lot of points. Okay. And yet he was able to get to Mahomes twice. Now you're going against a Seattle team that per PFF has the 8th worst run pass blocking unit in all of the NFL. Like, this is a situation where the tackles, the pressures are going to be there. He is going to be somebody who in a few weeks you're going to be hearing more on national broadcasts. Well, Jacob Martin has come onto the scene since Storm Armstrong went on IR because this guy is playing with a high motor. You see him constantly applying pressure, getting to the quarterback, making the quarterback feel uncomfortable, and he's been hitting home against tough competition. Just imagine what he's going to do against the Seahawks this week. So give me Jacob Martin as my play for the week at defensive line. JT, let's go to the linebacker position. Who's a play for you at linebacker?
So I mentioned it just briefly at the beginning of the show, but there's a chance that Trevin Wallace, who went out with injury last week, ends up missing this week. If he does, Christian Roseboom came in and took over the green dot. He's been playing well even without the green dot with Trevin Wallace as the LB2. If he ends up being LB1 this week, I think he is a must start. He's way down the rankings in most categories. If you look at him right now, he's LB 37 this week. But if there's no Trayvon Wallace, I think he ends up getting a ton of play time. He has been really good. Like you talked about the 3-4 weeks. Let's look at that. The last 4 weeks for Roseboom, he's had 9, 6, 7, and 12 tackles. And that is with him not being technically the number 1 linebacker. I really like Roseboom this week. Going against the Packers, they're going to pound the rock with Josh Jacobs. He's going to get a chance for a lot of tackles. If you saw what the Packers did against the Steelers, they threw a ton of underneath routes, and the linebackers had all kinds of opportunities to make tackles. Now, for the Steelers, it didn't work out because they missed a ton of those tackles, but I think Roseboom makes those tackles. I think he's a really sneaky play. If he's been a guy that's been on your bench the last couple of weeks and you're like, oh, he's not the guy, I'm playing other guys. To me, I looked through a bunch of my lineups this week, and I had him there, and I was debating between him and a couple other guys, and I'm like, I think Roseboom's the play this week. So I'm putting him in there. To me, I just think he's a nice, solid play. He's going to have a good floor. Even if Wallace plays, does he get 100% of snaps coming off the injury? I don't know. So I think Roseboom is a guy I've liked in the past. He's been solid. We know he can be, and he's been good the last 4 weeks, so I like it.
Love it. I love it. Love it. Aiden's in the chat. He said, Jorge, you lied to us. Kane Medrano did not get more snap last week for the Commanders. So this is a very loaded comment. So Kane Medrano pre-NFL draft over on Fourth and Frames, our redraft show, which you can catch Wednesdays at 10 p.m. Eastern with Rhett Manuel, Drew Scott, Nate Markham, and Kyle Ziegler. We were talking about in the pre-draft process, just players in general. And one player that really stood out that was granted a defensive player was Kane Medrano from UCLA, and how he apparently at the combine, he was like the fastest linebacker at the combine this year. There's some like impressive metric that he had at the NFL combine where he was like super athletic, and like Nate Markham, I'll skip the entire detail of why we were talking about him, but let's just say the expression, he's a lunch pail kind of guy. He's like an insert generic hardworking person on the football field. And that is really really censoring a lot of what that conversation topic was. It's funny. It's not a bad thing. It's funny. Go back and watch that episode if you want to be entertained in that capacity. Anyhow, where I'm going with this is Joe Witt, the defensive coordinator for the Washington Commanders, did say that Cam Madrano would be getting an increase in usage. Don't blame me. I didn't lie to you, Aiden. Joe Witt did. That is all. Let's pull up this one right here. Summer is great 64. Is this the same summer? Different summer? Same summer that we always talk to? Just a different handle or not? Either way, it doesn't matter if it's not. If it's a new summer, welcome new summer. Hey guys, what are your thoughts on picking one from Quentin Lake, Jamari Connor, Harrison Smith, and Metellus for DB this week, and for choosing one linebacker, Splain, Ernest Jones, and Cashman? I have my pick. Who do you have picks? Rather, who do you have for you?
Man, this is a toughie. That's actually a good group to be picking from. Quentin Lake has been an absolute stud lately, and they're letting him do a little bit of everything. He had a monster game last week. I really like him. They let him blitz. He had a sack. He's been all over the place. I like what they're doing with the Rams, and they have a great matchup this week. So I like him. I think I'm going Lake, even though I don't think you can really go wrong with any of the four of those guys. I'd probably go Lake, Kamari, Martellus, then Harrison Smith, though Harrison Smith has been making a push lately. So he has been nice. Linebacker, excuse me.
That's a tough one, right?
Man, that's a toughie. That's a close group. I know why she has a problem deciding. I'm probably going Cashman in that group, but it's real close. I think that is a pretty good group all together. Man, I could see you going Ernest Jones as well. But Spillane's been great. I'm just worried about the defense being on the field a lot. I think they're gonna be pretty good this week. I'm feeling good about the Patriots. So what do you think, Jorge? Because that's a good question, because those are tough calls, all those.
So the Detroit Lions since week 6, and again, I like looking at trends. And by the way, she said this is the same summer. So awesome. Welcome back, Summer. Love the new YouTube handle. The Detroit Lions allowed the second most fantasy points to the safety position since week 6. With Andrew Van Ginkel returning to the lineup, you're going to get a sense of normalcy in terms of roles for the Minnesota Vikings, which is why I'm going to roll with Metellus, because we saw last year just how dominant he was as a box safety. The first few weeks of the season, he was playing more in coverage, playing for in free safety, but the past few weeks, going back to the box role, he's really been tearing it up. And again, with the defense kind of coming together, Brian Flores is going to put these players in position to where they can maximize their potential. So I'm going Metellus here. As far as the linebacker here, I'm gonna go with Ernest Jones here at the linebacking position, and that kind of ties me into my play at the linebacker position. Thank you very much, Summer, for the question. Always great to see you in the chat and watching the show. I'm going with Drake Thomas, LB 39 versus the Washington Commanders. Past couple weeks, I wrote about him in the waiver wire column, which you can check again over at fantasyandframes.com. The past 3 weeks, the Commanders have led the 5th most fantasy points per game to the linebacker position. What I find to him to be is somebody who is a playmaker all over the field. You look over the past 2 games he's played in, 14 total past 3 games he's played in, 14 total tackles, 1 sack, 3 TFLs, 4 pass deflections. He's good. He's good. The past game, Fantasy Pros IDP scoring, he scored you 16.5 points, which had him as a top 12 linebacker, top 15, linebacker. That is nothing to scoff at, folks. And what he really reminds me of, or who he really reminds me of, is Caden Ellis. JT, you remember when Caden Ellis was with the New Orleans Saints? And it was like, is it Pete Werner? Or is it Caden Ellis? Like, which one are they going to hold on to? And then they chose to stick with Pete Werner, and Caden Ellis went out to free agency. And now he's with the Atlanta Falcons.
Yep.
One of the things that I always liked about Caden Ellis was that He could be asked to rush the passer. He could be asked to play in slot coverage. He could be asked to play off-ball linebacker. And he delivered at all these different positions on the field. And so however you needed to get fantasy points, he was getting them. My concern a couple weeks ago when I wrote about him is I said, buyer beware. In deep leagues, he is definitely a good option because he's getting the majority of snaps at the linebacker 2 position for the Seattle Seahawks next to Ernest Jones. Hence why I recommended Ernest Jones to you, Summer, a few minutes ago. What I was hoping to see, since he had that, anointing of being the LB2 for the Seahawks, was, are you getting just splash plays out of him that it's elevating his fantasy floor, or are you getting some tackles, some quality tackles, meaning solo tackles that are helping to establish a high fantasy floor, and then whatever impact plays he has on top of that will obviously elevate his fantasy season. And it did. His tackle numbers went up this past week. The solo tackles went up. He had 6 solo tackles and very few assisted tackles. So yeah, I loved it. I loved everything he's seeing. You still see some of the pass deflections and tackles for a loss, defensive stops, everything, that you want out of a player that is going to keep him on the field, you're seeing out of Drake Thomas. And again, going back to the fantasy aspect of it, the Commanders giving up the 5th most points to off-ball linebackers. So both Ernest Jones and Drake Thomas are going to eat. In fact, I'd see, Drake Thomas, he's not going to be Frankie Louvu, where Frankie Louvu is playing more of an edge rushing role these days, but he's going to be Frankie Louvu light with a higher fantasy and tackle floor. So that's why I'm saying Drake Thomas is the way to go for you this week. Let's wrap up our plays with defensive backs. And what do you know? We're talking about the same game here. Who do you got as a play here for you?
I feel like it's like every week. Sometimes we just get on a theme. It's like last week was the Niners. This week it's the Commanders, Seahawks. Like we just sometimes we don't do it on purpose. It just happens sometimes. To me, my play is Quan Martin, INI, Illinois guy, DB 51. He has been on a tear lately. Now we know that anybody who watches this, we know we always talk about like you want those guys that play box safety, not the deep safety. You want the guy who plays box, not deep. Well, he plays deep safety, but he's been on a tear anyway. Even though he played 74% of snaps deep, he's playing 100% of snaps in a very ravaged secondary. No one else is playing very well in that secondary other than him, at least at the safety spot. Some of the corners are playing well. He has just been tearing it up lately. Quan Martin won me my Monday night matchup in a league where I was fighting to stay tied for first place. He basically won. Him and Nick Bolton won me the Monday night matchup. So that's why Quan's on my list here. Fantastic game against the Chiefs. 14 tackles, 10 solo from a deep safety. Now, that's not good for your team. In real life, it's great for fantasy, but he has been on a tear lately. 13 points per game over the last 4 games is what he's been averaging. Just came off that big game with the Chiefs. The linebackers has been kind of a weird situation here with the Commanders lately because of injuries and moving guys around. Frankie Louvu more playing more of a defensive end spot, like you had mentioned. It's really kind of been like a mix of like, okay, Bobby Wagner, McGee, Louvu's been helping at DN because they've been really beat up at defensive end at this point. So a little bit of mix. So Quan Martin, even though he's playing deep safety, seems to be the guy that's making most of the plays in the secondary. So to me, he's my deep pick. And I'll tell you how much confidence I have in him. I actually am going to play him over Xavier McKinney in a couple leagues, which I know seems kind of crazy. Much bigger name, much bigger contract. I actually like Quan Martin a little more. I'm actually going to play him over a guy about 15 to 20 spots ahead of him in the rankings for most people. I just think Quan has a big game. I really like what he's been doing lately, showing his athleticism, played in a killer secondary at Illinois, and he's showing that now in the NFL here in his second year.
It's crazy looking at his defensive snap share from week 8. He is the only commander at safety who played 100% of defensive snaps. Yes, his box safety percentage was only 13%. He played deep safety 73.9%. But you look at Jeremy Reeves, who's technically playing the more box role in terms of safety, only on the field 53.6%. Splitting time away is Darnell Savage. And we were talking about Darnell Savage coming to the Commanders a few weeks ago when Will Harris went down. So by default, you want the guy who's going to be on the field all the time and making those plays. So I love it. My guy is Ty Okada, the DB 88. Yes, folks, I am digging deep here for some great options for you for week 9. I mentioned earlier during news and notes that Julian Love suffered a setback this past practice, and there's concern that he may not be playing on Sunday Night Football. And since he's been out since week 5, Ty Okada has stepped in his place, and since week 5, he has been the safety 13 in points per game, averaging 10.4 points per game. He's had 17 total tackles, a sack, a couple pass deflections. He's led the team in box snaps and defensive snap share during that time. Again, it's one of those situations where, the opportunity has been there, the volume has been there, the location of where he's playing on the field has been there. And again, the Commanders are pretty generous to the defensive back position, excuse me, the safety position. So everything's aligning right now for Okada to continue playing pretty well if Julian Love is not a go. If Julian Love is a go, yes, I'm always concerned about playing somebody who's coming off of an injury, especially a hamstring injury. But given how juicy this matchup is for the Seahawks secondary versus the Commanders, I would still play Love. If it's not Love, then definitely Ty Okada. And with that, let's head over to our fades for the week. I'll start us off here this time. Josh Hines Allen, currently ranked as the defensive lineman 28. Man, over the past 3 weeks, he has been averaging only 5.2 points per game, which has him like in the DB 60s, So he's definitely not been living up to the DL playable asset here. Over the past 3 games, he's had 10 pressures. He's earned 10 pressures, getting to the quarterback 10 times, applying pressure. But he hasn't been able to capitalize that. His sack conversion rate has been 0, as he's had 0 sacks. He has a pressure rate of 11.5%, which is just above the league average. He's not blowing you away in terms of his pressure rate. And Las Vegas allows the second fewest fantasy points to the defensive end / edge position. So a lot of name, big name, probably had some big draft capital, just not performing. Don't let his DL 28 ranking, ECR ranking fool you. Nothing is going right for him this year for fantasy football purposes. I want to be clear on that. So you're not playing him versus the Raiders this week.
He was a fade for me last week, and he's honestly been slowly but surely all year dropping down my dynasty rankings. I hate to do it, but he is not playing well. He's not playing well. He's a guy that most people have had like as a top 10 to 15 overall, all position combined IDP player coming into the season. And it's not pretty, man. He is not living up to expectations at all. I pretty much am not playing him anywhere at this point, unless I just don't have any other option. Like if I have any better option or even somebody that I kind of feel excited about, I'm playing him over Josh Allen Hines at this point. It's not been good.
Do you have a defensive lineman fade that you're interested in, or not interested in, I should say?
Yeah, not interested is more like it. You know what? You're great. Oh, I deleted my guy. You're not gonna believe this. I deleted him off the sheet. Now I gotta go back and look. I thought I had it on there and I misplaced him. My D lineman that I was out on this week is Alex Highsmith for the Steelers. Indy's been really good in pass coverage. Obviously, they're pounding the rock. The up and down with him and Herbig at D end, even TJ Watt has not been living up to what we expect lately. I'm just, as a Steelers fan, maybe I'm just pounding a little too hard, but they have not been good in the pass rush. It's like they know every time everyone's blitzing, every time someone's coming to the outside, they're not getting home lately. Highsmith's coming off the injury, and I just don't love it. To me, right now, Highsmith and Herbig are two guys. You got to play TJ Watt if you have them, but Highsmith and Herbig are two guys I've been pretty high on all year, but I think I'm avoiding here until I see something out of them, because Herbig first is just not getting the snaps since Highsmith came back, and I have not seen the burst out of Highsmith since he got back. So right now, Highsmith, depending on what type of league you play in, some leagues he is considered a linebacker, but in most of the leagues I play in, he's considered a D lineman. So.
Yeah, that's a very good call. The Colts for defensive end / edge rusher are allowing the 7th fewest fantasy points per game to that position. So love that take there. Heading over to the linebacker position, my fade for the week is Jack Campbell versus the Minnesota Vikings. Since week 6, the Vikings have allowed the 2nd fewest points to the off-ball linebacker position. Fantasy Pros ECR currently, as of today, has him listed as the LB8. Now, during that same time span since week 6, he has only put together a tackle rate of 11.8%, which is actually below the league average for linebackers in terms of tackle rate. Now, here's the thing. Here's a situation where it's like bad on the field play per PFF translates into okay fantasy point production play. Since week 6, he has actually been the linebacker 6 in fantasy points per game, which is like, that doesn't make sense. How is a player who's grading out poorly still doing well from a fantasy perspective? The reason is because nobody else behind him is going to be taking his snaps away. So he's going to be on the field by default, and the volume is just going to be there. But I thought to myself, okay, well, something's not adding up here. Why are people ranking him so highly? And people are obviously looking at the fantasy point production, but I'm just like, well, where's the fantasy point production coming from? It's not coming from his tackles. I'll tell you that much. He's not piling up enough tackles, being efficient with his tackle prowess to get you fantasy points there. So I looked into his, previous week's statistics, and what's really helped salvage a lot of his games because of the low tackle floor has been sacks in back-to-back games. Look, folks, if you're looking for like an edge rusher or a defensive lineman, or that's where you want to take pressures and looking at whether or not they're converting their pressures to sacks. Like that is one aspect of analyzing a defensive lineman. There are other aspects of doing that for fantasy purposes. Not off-ball linebackers. Like these are guys who are not meant to go out there and get sacks or rush the quarterback. These are guys who are meant to stop the run and get you tackles. And you can't bank on these impact plays week in and week out to save you from a fantasy perspective. So as tough as a matchup with Minnesota, I'm not seeing where without a splash play, Jack Campbell is providing you LB8 upside. So definitely fading Jack Campbell this week here. JT, who is your fade at the linebacker position?
You're not going to believe this, but I'm going back to the well and going to Washington, Seattle.
It's a good game to pick people. Yeah. Or not pick people.
Is my fade at linebacker this week. For many of the reasons we just talked about, was he's playing more off-ball linebacker because of all the injury. He's playing more DN. Thank you. Sorry. More on the edge because of the injuries and everything else that was going on. Right. His tackle efficiency last week, 3.3%. He had 2 tackles.
Wow.
Brutal. I watched that game and I'm seeing his number and I'm like, missed tackle. I'm like, what is he doing? I mean, he was whipping guys in open space everywhere. I think if you're playing him, you are 100% relying on he gets home and gets a sack this week. If that's why you're playing him, because I just don't think the tackle floor is there for him at all. And like you said with your play earlier, if it was me, I would much rather be playing Jacob Martin at defensive end than Luvu as my linebacker. I think there's higher upside for Martin at defensive end. So I'm going with that. It's a little bit of a mess with the Commanders right now. It's weird because there's certain guys I really like and there's certain guys I really I'm not liking. And that's also kind of why I like Quan Martin, is because it's like Bobby Wagner. And if Bobby Wagner's not making a tackle, Quan Martin is the only guy left to sweep things up right now. Because Luvu's missing tackles, the strong safety, whoever they're playing, has not been good. So it's basically been Bobby Wagner making a tackle or Quan Martin. And so that's why I know it seems weird. I'm sure people are like, man, you guys just talk about one game. But it's like a stack on top. Because of these other guys aren't good, these other guys are going to be better. And that's why I'm on a Quan Martin and I'm off a Luvu, if that makes any sense.
No, that makes 100% sense. Heading to the defensive back position, my fades for this week, I'm giving a 2-for-1 special. Buda Baker, Jalen Thompson, two guys who have been, the cream of the crop. Buda Baker, especially for fantasy managers for so many years, just always, starts draft season as a top 12, if not top 10 defensive back overall. They just haven't been playing well. You look at the box snaps, they play comparable box snaps. You look at the safety snaps, they've been playing comparable safety snaps. In Fantasy Pros, fantasy points scoring in terms of points per game since week 6, Baker, the safety, 51. Thompson, the safety, 54. The Cowboys allowed the 5th fewest fantasy points per game since week 6 to the safety position. This is, again, much like we were talking about for the Denver Broncos with Hufanga and Brandon Jones in the preseason, JT. Another example of two great IDP options, playing the same role, eating into each other's production. The only difference is with Denver, one has separated themselves. Hufanga has separated himself from Jones, playing more of the box snap role, where Jones is now starting to shift more into the free safety role. Here, these guys are still eating into each other's opportunity. So given the poor matchup versus Dallas and just how not one has been able to separate from the other in terms of just productivity, fading both Buda Baker and Jalen Thompson this week.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I really like Taylor Demerson, the younger guy, is second year. I really wish they'd kind of work him in a little bit more, because I've liked what I've seen out of him this year when he's got playing time. Just, it's tough when you have two veterans like that to kind of get in there and make some noise. But I do wish I'd see him in there a little bit more over Thompson personally.
I mean, if the season continues to go poorly and Kyler doesn't come back and they start, calling it wraps early on, you may see more snaps for him. But I digress. Who's your faded defensive back?
All right, so I'm fading Xavier Watts from Atlanta against New England this week. He is DB 24. People got excited about him early, played really well to start the season for the Falcons. Played a little bit of the box safety role. He was kind of a turnover guy at Notre Dame. I thought they really stole him in the draft, and I still like him as a player overall, especially for Dynasty. But here's a stat that's pretty interesting over the last 2 weeks for Atlanta. 2 weeks in a row, Jesse Bates, who's usually the deep safety, and has played deep safety almost his entire career, he has spent over 70% of the defensive snaps in the box. Well, if Jesse Bates is in the box, where's Xavier Watts at? Not in the box. He's playing deep safety. So they've kind of switched roles here a little bit. And that's not usual, especially for Bates, a guy he's been a playmaker, but he's been a guy who's played deep safety pretty much his entire career. So now the fact that they're kind of switching that up, trying to get Bates to make some more plays near the line of scrimmage, and Watts playing deeper, especially against New England, who, let's be honest, they're not stretching the field very often. Drake May's playing fantastic, but they don't have a lot of burners down the field. Watts is not going to get a lot of chance for pass deflections or interceptions, I don't think, in this game. So you're looking like, okay, if he's not getting pass deflection and interceptions, what does he need? He needs tackles. Well, he's playing deep safety. So unless he's the last line of defense and he pulls a guy down by the ankle, he's not going to get a lot of tackles. So to me, he is a fade this week. If I have somebody else I can play, I'm playing him just because I don't see where the points are coming from for Watts unless he gets a pick this week. And like I said, Drake May's been playing phenomenal lately. I don't know if that happens. And as I know, Jorge, counting on an interception to make your week for a player is like you're literally playing the lottery. You're literally playing the lottery if you're like, oh, I'm going to play this guy because he might get a pick.
Right.
No, you don't want to do. That's a bad IDP strategy.
Yeah, that's like waiting for like you have one player left to salvage your week, and it's like on Monday Night Football, and it's like now with like 2 games on Monday night, it's like this is like the PM game that you're waiting for a play if you're an East Coast person at like midnight to like rescue you, and then it doesn't happen. Then you're just like, tomorrow's
like I just all I need is a pick 6. I need like a 60-yard pick 6 and I'll win this week. Oh yeah, that happens all the time.
Yeah, no, exactly. All right, well, that's going to do it for our plays and fades here on Shoot the Gap. We do have one segment left, but before we do that, just a reminder, head over to fantasyandframes.com tomorrow. Read Joe Harlow's IDP plays and fades for week 9. He's got a fantastic list, more options for you to look at that we haven't covered in today's show, as well as make sure to check over our rankings over on Saturday at fantasyandframes.com for IDP. And we do on Sunday mornings, our Sunday morning pregame show. We do that from 9 a.m. to noon. Sometimes we go over a little bit over noon. And we basically, we talk about, different flex options for you to consider. And we do like the pros and cons of, each of these flex options that we're talking about. We go over news and notes. We give you all the latest injury information, breaking news, as well as answer, your start sit questions. And then, of course, Andy Behrens, formerly of Yahoo, now with the deepshot.com. He joins us on the show. So we have a pretty good group of people. JT, you were on with us the other week. So
I'll be back in the mix this week. Colts are at Steelers, so I'll be back in. I'm going to be nervous about that game because, of course, I got my 2 teams going against us, and you know what that means. The better team is going to lose because that's what always happens. The Steelers are somehow going to play out of their mind and beat the Colts after looking terrible the last 2 weeks, but we'll get in that on Sunday morning.
Sounds good. All right, let's get to our sack lunch. So, folks, it basically goes like this. So there's 4 of us on the show, Gary Davenport, Steve Huntgardner, and we have this, segment we call Sack Lunch that JT, you and I started last year. The premise is this. Each week during the season, we're allowed to pick one player one time throughout the entire season. This player can only be picked one time that we're predicting to get a sack. Okay? So you have to really pick your players well, and you have to realize that if you pick this player who's, let's say you pick, Aiden Hutchinson, and Aiden Hutchinson doesn't get you a sack that week, that is the only time you could play Aiden Hutchinson that season. So you're SOL. And so it's the counting is, so 1 sack gets you 1 point, a half a sack gets you half a point. If you call, and it can be any defensive player. So if you're a defensive back, if you say, I want a defensive back to get a sack, and you make that ballsy of a call, and that pays off for you, because you look at the blitz rates of all the defensive backs, and this person is like, hitting home, getting sacks, and he's being blitzed a lot. I'm going to call him. If a defensive back gets you a sack, that's 3 points. If an off-ball linebacker gets you a sack, that's 2 extra points. So right now, Steve is in the lead, followed by JT, then I'm in the back. But I've been picking players who have been like, the upside plays.
You've been going a little more long shots, so you
long
get
shots.
Less. I will be honest, I'm real mad about the last 2 weeks. I should have had a full sack out of Latu, and I should have had a full sack out of Cam Hayward. They scored them as half sacks, which is garbage. And I will tell you that Latu's half sack absolutely screwed me. I had a huge parlay going and only lost it because I had Latu as a full sack in my parlay, and they only gave him a half. I missed only on the half sack. Pretty upset about it. It was a huge win. I would have won like $1,000 on it. So not happy that they scored that half a sack. That's 2 weeks in a row they got me to the half a sack.
Unreal. Well, let's give everybody our predictions for who's going to get a sack this week. This is the last week I'm going to go under the radar because starting next week, it's
You're like, I'm saving up all the studs for the end of the year, right?
I really am. And Steve Hungartner, he actually started the year using the stud defensive ends. And there's two ways to look at it. You could either wait for when the games get really important that these elite people kind of like turn things onto a next level and get you the sack numbers. Versus his methodology was, well, let me get all these guys who are elite and have them perform for me now before there's any potential injuries. So, like for example, Nick Bosa, he called 1 week, and I can't use Nick Bosa anymore now, can I? Obviously for the injury. But anyhow, last time,
terrible strategy. Not a terrible strategy.
It's, I mean, there are pros and cons. It ain't over until the fat lady sings or fat person sings or whatever gender you want to choose. Somebody's singing. The best part about this whole
fat little baby Jesus.
The fat little baby Jesus, exactly. The fat little.
I can help myself. I can help. Little baby Jesus.
Let's just piss off everybody. And so screw it. And here's the best part about the sack lunch competition, folks, is that whoever comes in last on the very last week of Shoot the Gap, as we do our season recap, we have this little thing at Fantasy and Frames we like to call pie bets, where you have to take a legitimate pie, not like a tin foil with some whipped cream. Like no, like a legit pie, and you get a pie in the face. And so you're going to have some pie on the face. A little funny segment we like to do there. Anyhow, let's get to our sack lunches predictions. Donovan Ezuraku, rookie, Dallas Cowboys, Arizona Cardinals are allowing the most fantasy points to the defensive end / edge position, and on the season have allowed the 7th most sacks in the NFL. Look, and Ezuraku has been playing by a considerable amount, rather, the most snaps along the Dallas Cowboys defensive line. So give me Ezuraku getting Jacoby Brissett and or Kyler Murray this week. Who is yours?
I'll do mine and Steve's, and then you can jump in with Gary's at the end.
All right.
We're going to go with what I said at the beginning of the show. You got to be on the LA Chargers this week. Got to be on the Chargers against the Titans. I'm always a little nervous about the West Coast teams coming to either the East Coast or Midwest and playing early games. A little nervous for the overall score, but not nervous about this defense showing up. I think they're going to crack this week. So I got Tuli Tuapu as my guy. I already said 6 sacks this year. He's been a monster. I'm taking him. I almost took Khalil Mack, but because Steve already took Khalil Mack, I decided I was going to go the other way. My guy Tuli. I couldn't hate on him like that. So I'm taking Tuli. Steve jumped in. He's taking Khalil Mack. He says after injury, he came back last 2 games. He got a sack in each of them. He's been really good. Again, we brought up the stat earlier. 34 freaking sacks given up by the Titans this year. We're hoping Cam Ward isn't dead by the end of the season. We got to hope he makes it to season 2. He's getting destroyed. Yeah. Got to move around a little more, Cam Ward, and get rid of the ball. Just don't do it this week. Let's get some sacks this week. So I'm taking Tui, and Steve is taking Khalil Mack.
Yeah, we hope, for your sake, that he runs into a sack or 2 if he's going to start scrambling. So
that's right.
Those are also options. So Gary Davenport, the godfather of IDP, he is taking Aiden Hutchinson, and to say what he wrote about him, time to earn that bag that Aiden Hutchinson got. And what was it? 140
huge contract, right?
Was it 150 with 141 guaranteed or something like that? Something crazy like that?
41 million guaranteed. Gosh, that'd be nice to see in your bank account, wouldn't it?
Right?
Woo!
Yeah, I will. Sure,
I'll take 4 digits sometimes.
Yeah, it's like the taxes be damned. I'll take whatever is left over and be happy for the rest of my life. So, anywho, thanks, folks. Thanks for watching our special episode of Shoot the Gap here on Thursday night. We will be back at our regular time with Steve and Gary, JT, and myself at 9 p.m. Eastern when we live stream. And of course, you can catch the audio version via podcast form after each show. So tomorrow for this one, normally podcasts drop Thursday mornings. If you're wondering where you can listen to us, whether it's Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts, look for the Shoot the Gap podcast like, subscribe, let us know what you think. Aside from that, we got the pregame show with Nate Mark and myself, JT and Andy Behrens. Aside from that, anything else you got going on this weekend, JT?
Just football, more football. My high school I went to and I coached at, we are hosting a first round playoff game on Saturday. So I got flag football in the morning. I got our high school first round of the Illinois State football playoffs, 6A class on Saturday at 2:00. So big game there. So we're going to be doing that and then coming on the show here with you guys Sunday morning and then going to be freaking out about the Steelers-Colts game, watching it, hoping they both play well and score a lot of fantasy points. But yeah, that always tough when my two favorite teams play each other.
Nice. So my son, who is 13 months, yesterday, we have him dressing up as a golden doodle, and our golden doodle Penny is going to dress up like a baby. So we're going to have a little swap action going on there tomorrow night, and then just like you, just laying low as best as possible and then getting ready for the pregame show. And folks, we really hope that you enjoyed this episode of Shoot the Gap. It was a pleasure to bring you this. Sorry, it's a little bit late this week. For those of you who are watching on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button, the notification bell, so you're notified when Fantasy and Frames drops all of our podcast and video content. Follow us on Twitter. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, you name it. FantasyandFrames.com. IDP plays and fades first thing tomorrow morning. Check them out as well as all our other articles there. So for JT, I'm Jorge. Thank you all very much for tuning in tonight, and we'll see you next week at 9 p.m. Eastern.